when I had that session, I'd gone through school covering my writing, and I thought that was weird. But for me, it was normal. I asked about why am I in my 30s and I've got no idea that I'm intuitive. I asked for public speaking because not that I had public spoken at that time, except for I stood up at my wedding and I would lose my color. It would be like, I want to die right now. So I was aware that I had this thing about speaking in front of people. Didn't even have to be public, actually. I went straight in because I'd recently started to develop my senses so I could see, and I saw myself. I cried in that session. I could feel the intensity of who I was, and I guess the injustice around what had happened to me.
Toni Reilly, Dr. Toni Reilly, welcome to Fear Unzipped.
Thank you, Sandi. I'm so excited to be here. We've been talking about doing this for a long time now.
For such a long time. In fact, when this came into my thought process, which was many, many, many months ago, you were one of the first people I wanted to talk to. And the listeners are going to understand why I wanted you, because you're just such a delight. But I want them to know a little bit about you. And so I don't normally read, I've said this off of bios, but I want to get it right. I do know that you are the foremost past life and reincarnation practitioner in Australia, which I think is pretty amazing. And I do know that you worked with Dr. Brian Weiss, who wrote the book Many Lives, Many Masters. And the listeners do know that it is one of three books that profoundly changed my life.
Oh.
Yeah, and I read it about 30 years ago, Toni.
Oh,
and
wow.
When I read it, I gave it to, I was 12. No, no, I'm kidding. I gave it to many people. It opened my mind to possibility, and it got me on this path. And whoever hasn't read it, I highly recommend you read it. But you actually worked one-on-one with him, which is so incredible to me. And then you
one of the blessings in my path, I would say.
Oh, and then you're a blessing in my path. And it's so funny. And I think we should think about this sometimes. We're reading a book, and then somewhere down the line, I have a connection. I mean, 30 years later, this is, well, I call it all magic, but anyway.
Oh, serendipity, isn't it? That book, Sandi, it sent me from what I describe as mainstream life into, whoa, there's a whole new mission to take. But it was that book for me as well. It was profound.
And you also have what's called the SoulLife Coaching School, if I have that right. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive into all of it because I want to know everything. And then what I'd like to start with, though, is your backstory. And the part before it was all rosy, and maybe some of the fears that you had to go through to kind of catapult yourself forward. Can you guide us on that a little bit?
I can. So, gosh, the backstory. It's long ago now, so I'm going to try and keep it succinct because I used to go into a whole lot of detail. But really, it always starts around my mid-30s. I started observing myself before that, but quite some time before that. But in my mid-30s, I had observed that my marriage was not working. And as part of the process of facing up to that and also taking responsibility for where it was at, I became hyper aware that I was intuitive, but I didn't know what that meant. So part of finding out what does it mean to be intuitive led me down the path of finding a meditation teacher who in turn told me to read Many Lives, Many Masters. Before that, I hadn't really ever thought about past lives. It just hadn't been in my realm of thought. I really was a mum with 3 kids and very, you can imagine you're busy and just busy with life. And I worked full time as well. So at that point, when I read that book, Many Lives, Many Masters, it was the first time in my life that I thought, I know what I'm here to do. And I hadn't yet even had a session, but I thought, wow, this can help people. So I became possessed, obsessed from after reading that. And the mission then was, well, how do I get this done? I'll have to fly to the States. And anyway, I told Mary, who was my meditation teacher, I said, whoa, I have to have this done. She says, I can do it. So within a matter of days, I read that book in a few hours, really, actually.
Mhm.
And yeah, she's within a few days, I was on her couch having a session, first past life session. And what happened in that session was I had only just become aware in developing my intuition because I started meditating that I actually was pretty messy and I had some pretty deep self-worth issues. So because I already was aware of those and I felt riddled with guilt for leaving my marriage, so that I asked for that. Because the thing was we're addressing symptoms and I'd only really discovered that I had any. Um, of course, it was the beginning of discovering that I had many and deep. So, oh, my camera just went fuzzy. Anyway,
Okay,
straight.
that was so weird. You literally
Yeah.
put your hand across and all of a sudden you're clear. Okay, that was wild. For people that are
Energy.
watching, that was
Uh,
wild.
uh,
Yes.
yeah. So um, when I had that session, I asked for, I'd gone through school covering my writing and I thought that was weird. But for me, it was normal. So anyway, I asked about that. I asked about why am I in my 30s and I've got no idea that I'm intuitive. And I also asked for about guilt, and that was it. No, I asked for public speaking because not that I had public spoken at that time, except for I stood up at my wedding and I would lose my color. It would be like, I want to die right now. So I was aware that I had this thing about speaking in front of people. Didn't even have to be public, actually. So anyway, I go into my session. I went straight in because I'd recently started to develop my senses so I could see, and I saw myself. I cried in that session. I could feel the intensity of who I was and I guess the injustice around what had happened to me. So the first thing I'd seen was being to be hung as
Mhm.
a witch. And of course, I was a teenage girl who was nothing of the sort, except somebody who knew what poultice to make, what herbs or leaves and
Mhm.
fungus to put together to heal people's wounds. So there was that. I discovered that. And it, of course, after that, it cleared my intuition en masse. I also saw why I couldn't write. There was a different past life that I went to for that. And it was to do with speaking out in long ago in a past life and people thinking that you're crazy, or they thought I was crazy then. I was a man in that one. And so that one cleared my fear of speaking up and fear of people reading what I'd written. But I think the most important thing that happened in that session was from that moment, I knew that nobody, no matter how scientific they were or how accomplished they were in that arena, there's no way that I had made it up. I wouldn't fool myself. And because that's what happened, I knew it was real. And it went from there. So after the session, of course, it changed me. I could then write and speak. You don't know that immediately, actually. In the coming weeks, months, it became very evident that it had cleared. And of course, it was the start of getting on this journey of creating what is now SoulLife psychology. But I do remember saying to Mary, meditation lady, I have to learn this. She says, I have a class this weekend. You can come. She's teaching people to do past life regression. She had told me, by the way, that a Maori, who's Indigenous person from New Zealand, had taught her how to do this. So she was very casual with it. And from there, I learned that weekend. We learned through, she kept regressing us. There was 4 girls, myself and 3 others, and she would just regress one of us after the other. So we watched for a couple of days, each of us being regressed. And of course, we were regressed many times. So it was very hands-on, this training. And after that, I went and started seeing people. I was so confident. It was like, I suppose it's like magic or a miracle, if you like. But of course, knowing what we know with how everything's kind of destined and it plays out as it's meant to, that's exactly what happened. So I became a little bit of a psycho in recording everything. I was told, my guidance told me, you record everything. So I took notes for every session. I observed everyone, every session, and I started to gather my case studies, I guess you would call them, and everybody would come out with some profound change within themselves. So I got to see a lot of magic happen, for want of a better description.
Yeah.
And also from there, it gave me the roots for realizing how therapy works and how it was not about mantras. It was not about um, like pulling yourself up necessarily. It was like we'd gone beyond all of that when we went to these past lives, because we were talking directly to the individual. They were talking directly to their soul. So all of the humanness, it kind of gets cut out. But of course, it is to make this life better. So what happens is you see it from a higher perspective, what's going on and what you're doing and how you're reacting. And then that's when the magic happens for a person, because they know why. Why is this happening? Why did this happen? And that's where it all started.
Toni, it's so amazing. I'm thinking about Brian. So have you seen Brian Weiss yet? Have you studied with him yet? Or
Not yet, but not at that stage. So I worked with people for, I can't remember exactly, between 6 and 12 months
Mhm.
intensely. And then my plan was always, I must go and train with him. In my world, he was the only person I'd heard of with anything to do with reincarnation or past lives. So I wanted to go and train with him. And at that time, he used to do, and I actually think he still does, he would do a course once a year at Omega College in New York.
Mhm.
So I got myself to that course, and I remember I was running meditation groups at that time, and I remember while we were meditating, I got my message and it said, "You're going to meet a teacher over there." And I answered back in my mind, I said, "I know, it's Dr. Brian Weiss." And it said, "No, his name's Dan." And it said a few more little things like that. And I thought, because I was only getting to trust my own intuition then, I came back to the class. There was about 20 people in there, and each person would say what happened for them. So I told them. And I was going to train with him only a week or two after that. So anyway, it all played out. But the best thing that happened at that training, well, besides from coming across Dan when I'd been pre-told that I would, he was a hypnotherapist, an American hypnotherapist, and we had some brilliant conversations. So, but with Brian Weiss, I noticed in the training that he was going to regress only a few people on stage in front of everyone for them to observe. So after he did the first lady, I went up there. I had confidence came out of nowhere. I'm up there. Brian, can you regress me next? He says, he did this eye roll test. It's a hypnotherapy technique. And he said, yes, all right.
Mm,
So I did get to be regressed by him. And the other really cool thing was iPhones were very new then,
mm,
and they had only just come out with a camera, and Dan had one. So
mm.
because of that, he took pictures of me on stage. Look, granted, they're not great pictures, but you can see. So how what a blessing that was. So there was that. And then a few years later, he came to Australia for the first time. I think it was 2010 when he came, and I think Hay House brought him over. They did. Hay House brought him over.
Mhm.
And they asked me, they were looking for someone who'd been a student of his. So they said I could come to his shows. And then he did 3 over here, Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne. So I got to do that. Then the following year, he came back again,
Mm.
and he was to go on TV and talk about past lives. And I got to go on a national morning show with him, and it was just wonderful. He's truly, oh God, I could just cry right now talking about him, because he was so genuine,
Mm.
and he was not a gatekeeper of this incredible thing that people could do, that anyone could do or access. And he was just full of goodness. And of course, he had his wife as well, who did a similar thing, and they're just wonderful. So
To-
I had a brilliant experience.
oh, how fortuitous, but of course it was meant to be. I think people need to know if they don't know who Dr. Brian Weiss is. Is a psychiatrist,
Yes.
and he stumbled upon past lives just by regret by hypnotizing people. Wasn't that correct? And
Yes.
then you tell the story because you're much closer to it than I am.
I briefly, he had a patient, he calls them. He had a patient called Catherine, and from what I understand, or from what I can remember from the book, is she had so many debilitating fears. And no, she'd been in therapy for years, and nothing was working. So at the time that he started to work with her, but perhaps hypnotherapy was new to him then, but he started to do hypnotherapy with her, and she went into past life. And not only did she keep going into past life, she also in those realms was almost streaming, I call it, but perhaps other people know it as channeling. She was channeling information to him that he knew she couldn't know and no one else could. So, other than his wife, of course. But so, and I think back in that time, it was all an awakening for him as well. So Catherine was obviously momentous in his journey. And of course, from that, he wrote Many Lives, Many Masters about how all of her issues and fears disappeared. It took them a few times, but they got to a point where it wasn't working anymore because everything was fixed for her. So that's the basis of that story. And also, he writes so beautifully. All of his works are so easy to read and uplifting.
I agree. When I read it, I couldn't put it down. I had to have it with me at all times. And I read it really quickly too. And the way you talk about him, his authenticity and genuineness, it comes out in the words. But this
Yeah.
is a book you absolutely can't put down. And imagine reading it like 30 years ago. It's not like today where we can actually have this conversation and people aren't completely rolling their eyes and want to put you in a straitjacket.
Right.
So it's incredible thing. I remember one of his patients had a fear of taking showers, of just being in a bathtub or showers, and she had been drowned. Did you
Yes.
find when you were regressed, people in this present lifetime of yours, did you see them in these past lifetimes?
Yes, yes, they would always see. I hope I'm answering this right, or understanding the question. They would always see the reason why they had a fear. If it was a unreasonable fear or a phobia, then they would see what had caused it in the past life. So whether it had been that they drowned or they'd been suffocated somehow, often it was by snow or something like that.
Mhm.
So it was never, or not often was it from another person necessarily, but there were all sorts of reasons and scenarios that would come up for why people had these fears or phobias, and it would just almost instantly make it better.
And also did you, when you were regressed, did you see people in this present lifetime that you're living in that were in your past lives with you?
Oh, I did. I did.
Oh.
Actually, when I was on stage with Brian Weiss, with Dr. Brian Weiss, I'd asked him about guilt because I was so guilt-ridden about that
Mhm.
marriage. And I went into, he did a technique on me where basically I'm looking up at him with my hand pressed on his, and he goes like this, and you're straight in. It was really theatrical,
Wow.
but that's what he did with me. And in that lifetime, I saw that my dad now was my husband in that life. And it was the first time it changed me profoundly, because it was the first time that I came back. I came back from the training and I said, Dad, guess what? You were in my past life. And you know, you were my husband. Actually, in my past life, they'd come to tell me my husband had died, but it was my dad. And it was not, there's no like sexual abuse in my background. So it was quite obviously not related to that. And it made me realize how important the bonds are and how we do come back together from seeing him with me in that past life.
It is incredible. So I did, you had like a Zoom with a few people, and I did, and you regressed us. It was just a couple hours, and you regressed us. And I instantly, Toni, saw two very clear past lives. And I also asked for a sign and then we shared our past lives. And then I asked for a sign to get within the next couple days that that was real. It felt so real. It made so much sense to me. But I always like to have signs. And
Yeah.
and then what I had asked for was a crow feather, but in front of me in a place I would not see one normally.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget this. I was walking and I was talking to my son on the phone. I said, "Oh my gosh, I did this incredible past life thing with Dr. Toni Reilly." And I asked for a sign. And right when I said I asked for a sign, I stepped and there was a large black crow feather right in front of me, completely off the beaten path. It wasn't in the woods. It wasn't in a place where you would normally find one at all.
Yeah.
I instantly came back to my office and messaged you. I said, Toni, oh my God. And you wrote back, you said, yes, yes, yes. That's the way all of it works. I have a lot of clarity about a couple of those past lives. And they were really eye-opening. I love nature. One of them, I was a cowboy in the 1800s.
Yeah.
I loved my horses and I loved the land. And I remember how I got killed also, because you always take us to our death.
Always. Yes.
Can you explain that, the process of taking somebody through a regression just briefly, and then kind of how it works?
Yeah. So, as Sandy, as you just said, it's easily done in a group, but when you do it one on one, ooh, it's really extensive, I suppose, because you can go get more information. But the process in a one on one situation would be that you relax the person, and then you never actually tell them to go into a past life. You never actually do that. The guidance kind of guides them to a place where they're, well, what's out there or what's there. So you're basically grounding them into a lifetime that their soul has brought up for them. And away they go. So in person, you would be guiding them. Often they land or start off in a key scene. So usually what we have to do usually is go backwards and find out
Mhm.
how did they get to this point in that lifetime. So that's, I guess, the skill of facilitation, is that you learn what information you need to find out to help the person understand why they've been shown this certain thing. And of course you can feel the feelings in it as well, and they can. So what we do is we find the information. How did they get to the point where this happens? Often it might be that they die in a certain way, but regardless, no matter what we discover in the past life, can I also say it's always very human. So it's the same things in any past life that matter now. So it will be uh, being afraid of something, having a disagreement with somebody, loving your mom so much or somebody. So it's all about being in love, loving people you're connected with, death, losing people, and always the emotions that are invoked from these things, having children, all of the things that is what makes life, I guess, precious
Mhm.
and unique, the human experience. But what we always do in past life is we must go to the death scene. And what happens at that point is people almost always, if not always, know that their time's up. They know. And they'll say, yes, yes, I know. And off they go. They go home. And then we have a little conversation with the spirit of the person that they just were. And that's when, if there's anything that needs clarifying, they're told within a message. And often the messages are super simple as well. And it might be something like, trust yourself, or be open, or there's many things. Some people get messages this long and some people get a word or a sentence. Regardless, it resonates with them and they know it hits them here. So then when they come out of their session, no matter what's happened, because sometimes you see some violence, for example, because of course we've had a lot of that throughout history. And even if they see something like that, when you come out of the session, you always feel lighter, always lighter. And they all say it. So that's really the process of a session.
So when they get to their death part, and I've had three, and I've seen three past lives, and when I died, I there was no fear in me when I was being regressed because you're kind of outside your body looking in, like you're watching a movie.
Yes.
And I like that. I mean, I love that part. So people don't feel that fear of the death. It's just like being an observer
Yeah.
of something that's happening.
Yes, you're observing, and in that way also you can be. Sometimes people are right in there, and it goes between being in that body, feeling like you're in there, feeling the emotions, to sometimes it's like you're looking down on it and observing, and it goes between the both in any given session. So, but it certainly gives them the knowledge that they need to understand. And usually, I say usually because you never know what's going to happen. Every single
Yeah.
regression is different. But usually what happens is they're shown something that's relevant to how they feel now, or the feelings that are potentially plaguing them now, or an experience that's repeating now. So that's how it works, is they're shown something from their soul to help them understand now. Because obviously we're not doing this just to explore our past lives, though of course you
Mm.
can do it for curiosity. I was always doing it for therapy. It's like, okay, what are we going to fix? So they would always come. And even when people go for curiosity, it always comes back and they're like, oh, I understand this in my life now. And then it stops plaguing them so much.
Yeah, it's a healing process. It can't
Absolutely.
help but be a healing process where you find
Absolutely.
out why you have a phobia to something, why you can't speak when you were talking about being hung. Um, Obviously, that's choking your speaking.
Yep.
And I've had that same experience. I have another one. Now there's a fourth one. Being burned at a stake.
Mm.
I have such a fear of fire. I mean,
Oh,
I love fire. I love looking at a fireplace, and I love that. But the thought of getting burned absolutely freaks me out.
oh yeah.
And I went into a very deep meditation once, and I saw that. And I think, a lot of people, when they're intuitive, they've had that kind of a life
Absolutely.
and a misunderstood life. What about like near-death experiences? Do you work with people that have near-death experiences?
Oh, I'm so happy you asked me that.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Near-death experiences, in my observation, are the same or similar to what people have when you take them to, or you facilitate them to go in between. It's really just another energetic space. But when people go beyond the past life, sometimes it happens after the past life, or sometimes we specifically facilitate them to go and visit with their soul. That's what really they're doing. So if they go into that transcendent space, they're out of body, and it's, you never know what exactly will happen, but it will be much like how people describe a near-death experience, where they get to feel that extraordinary feeling that actually we can't comprehend here. So you only really get that in some sort of transcendent experience, whether it happens spontaneously, and a near-death experience is spontaneous. So, but one way or another, those experiences change people. And that's what I discovered about when you take them in between or home, then that's what they get, a similar experience to a near-death experience. It's just that it's facilitated and not spontaneous.
Right. Now, the people that I've talked to or heard about that have near-death experiences, usually the one thing that they come back with is it's about love and being loved. That is, life is about love, and they feel a love that we don't have the lexicon to even say what it is, and they see colors that we can't even describe, and a lot don't want to come back. But then I've read, I haven't talked to anybody that's had this happen, but some people have had really bad experiences in NDEs. Do you have an explanation of why that would be?
I think this is just my observations of what happens. I think that every individual gets what they need at the time for, I think, the stage they're at in this
Mhm.
current life journey. So therefore, whatever's coming up in that space is something to either, I suppose, usually it's empowering. But I guess when they have a negative experience, it's going to, when they come back, they're going to be sent on some sort of trajectory that changes their life. And maybe they start looking, I'm just putting this one out there, but
Mhm.
maybe they start looking deeper at why they're here, for example. But one way or another, what people experience in any transcendent session or experience, it will be to direct them now, somehow direct them, because it might be how they talk about it. Do they have to go on and write a book about it, share their experience? There's always a purpose in it. And I think that through the human experience, a lot of people are so, we have been throughout history, we became indoctrinated by religion with a whole lot of fear. And I think for a lot of people, it's difficult to imagine that it's all love on the other side. So for that, to that end, there has to be, I think, people come back and say that they didn't see it all like that, even though probably 99% of people do, that maybe it gives other people who are on the fence a little bit more faith in themselves that,
Mhm.
oh, there is two sides to everything, and maybe it helps them delve a bit deeper.
That makes sense to me because we go in with our own stories and where
Right.
we're from. But the thing that is remarkable, no matter where people are in the world or what their cultural backgrounds are, there are so many similarities in NDEs. So you
Yeah.
can't, there's something happening there. There's no question about it. What about karma? What is your take on karma?
This this has taken me a long time of studying, and predominantly I didn't read anyone else's material or take any notice of what they were doing because it was so wrapped up in what I was doing. So my observations are anecdotal. They come from my personal experiences, my own stream of information,
Mhm.
and also what thousands of people have relayed. But my discoveries are that this life, every life that we've lived, is planned, is outlined, and that karma is a human concept. It's another thing that whichever religion decided that that was a thing, it was another thing to make people afraid, make people feel like they've failed, make people The caveat is it makes people feel, they feel something.
Mhm.
They That's what karma is in my observations. It's a human thing. So I guess that's it, simply put. It's a human concept.
I come from the same space with that, Toni, that I think it's um it's like our own control source that we're using that story
Yeah.
and we're saying, oh, that happened to me because I did this terrible thing. It's
Yeah.
karma, it's, but I don't think what's beyond the veil works that way. I
No.
think it's pure love. And
Yes.
that's what I've heard. And no matter how horrible a person you were in this lifetime, once you get over to the other side, you are of love and light. And you learn, and then you're learning. So you've learned lessons. Um, what is the review process?
The review process, one or two of the books that I did read, along with the Brian Weiss one, was the work of Dr. Michael Newton.
Mhm.
And he did Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls. So when I read those books, I thought, wow, okay, well, this kind of makes sense. So, but what I discovered in my own work was that this is just my take. I feel like he needed to put something together that was palatable for the human to perceive because it's hierarchical, but there is no hierarchy over there.
Right.
And but it puts it into a way that people can process and understand. So, and in that way, it was brilliant work. And it's affected a whole lot of people very, very positively. But from my work, when people go there, it's not as structured as you die, you're going for a review, you're being rejuvenated, you're this, you're that. From my observations, we immediately return back to pure energy.
Mhm.
And all of the what people I think need to know while they're here is that there is something more there. So all of those thoughts and processes have been put in a way that we can feel like there's something wonderful that happens over there or that we're going to have retribution. And of course, when we get there, nothing that happened here is, it's just not relevant anymore.
Right. So, what about soul contracts? Do we have soul contracts?
Yeah, I think that again, for us as humans to perceive, there's definitely a what we could call a contract or a plan for each of us. From my observations, it's so intricate that even as a human, we couldn't comprehend it. But everything, every single thing that happens, every single thought, every choice
Mhm.
we make is all part of the experience that we will have in any given lifetime. Of course, we're talking about this one. And it annoys people because they're like, well, what about free will? And it's like free will is a human concept as well, because as a person, we're controllers because we've got a mind and we want to take control of what happens to us or what happens around us. So we feel like we've got choices here. But what I discovered is the choice that you make or don't make is the only one you were ever going to make. So if you're beating yourself up for a choice you made or made, you must cut yourself some slack because you were only ever going to make that choice. And we make our choices or we don't make a choice. And then I guess what people get to experience is regret. But it's all about the emotional experience around what's happened. First of all, we beat ourselves up in our journey of self-discovery. So there's those emotions. And we get affected by emotions really with every thought we have. So it's the human experience.
Can you think of some of the people you regressed that really stands out in your mind, a story that you just went, wow. I'm sure there are so many.
There's so many, Sandy. And like full disclosure, I have to say, when you do so many, they are almost in here and out, in and
Right.
out, in and out. I don't mean that they're coming in and out fast, but it all kind of molds into, I think it was why I was told to track everything and record everything, which I did. So the ones that I remember are almost the same ones. There's been ones that stuck in my mind, and they're the same ones that I can remember, even though there's so many.
Right.
But I think probably the first one that I really remember was a girl here in Australia. She was English though, but she lived here, and she had gone to Gallipoli, which was uh, World War One. It was a devastating regression. But through that regression, she was a teenage young man over there, and they were all going to die, jump out of the trench and be killed, and they knew it, and the fear was just palpable. And always makes me emotional.
Oh, yeah. So that also indicates the reality of it.
Oh yeah, you can feel it. I could feel it in that moment with her. Anyway, what happened after that regression? Well, first thing was she was told what she was meant to learn. We also asked what was the purpose of the life. She said she was to experience strength and courage. So that is the simple preface or purpose behind that lifetime. She was to experience strength and courage. But what happened after that is she went off to research who she was in that life because we got her name. We got her first and last name. And through the process, we'd worked out what her role was as that soldier. And everything added up when she found herself on the records because they keep records from those times. So that was a very exciting thing to have happen. Before that, though I'd done many regressions, I never had the notion to research them because for
Mm.
me, it was about making the life better. We're going to do some therapy. But that was the first one that came back with some concrete evidence that she had been this young lad before. That's one. There's so many, and for different reasons that they stick in my mind.
When
But
she,
usually, oh, sorry, Sandy, go.
no, no, no. When she came to you, did she just come in for past life regression? Or did she say, I have this problem with, I fear something and I don't know why I fear it? Does she
Yeah.
voice that before the regression?
Yes. She was very anxious and
Mm.
she lacked confidence. And she also told me that she had a dream, a persistent dream or a recurring dream, which had only tiny snippets. But also another thing that she said, well, she was English, so she emigrated to Australia and she was an Australian soldier then, but it explained her obsession with this country enough that she moved. She immigrated. So there were many things that came together from that particular regression. And in fact, it happens for every regression where it will help people make sense of things that they have been aware of or experiences that they've had. It's really quite phenomenal. It's a great case actually to showcase how it works.
It's remarkable. And then what about you being the practitioner? Because you just got very emotional reliving this, which probably happened a very long time ago, when you worked with her. Do you take on, can you feel what they're going through, like when they're killed or if they're shot? Do you physically feel it yourself?
Well, no, not always, but I I do sometimes get emotional, but they've got their eyes closed so they don't see.
Mhm.
And for them and for you as the facilitator, it goes as quick as it comes. So it's like once they move through and we're on to the next part of the lifetime, the emotion clears. But I think for me, I'm quite easy to pick up on people's energy anyway. But in the sessions, I find I think it's helpful in that it doesn't ever drain me. I never feel drained. I never feel like I've taken on somebody else's life or emotions, but certainly in the moment you can feel their emotion. You can feel it building in them if there's emotion in there. But I think with that particular Gallipoli lifetime, I feel like it's got a deeper connection to me, and it's why it still makes me emotional. Because personally, before I saw her, I went to Gallipoli years before, many years before. I always was quite obsessed with that myself. And when I went over there, so when she was describing her past life, I'd been there. I knew firsthand what she was talking about when she's describing. Let me step back a second. You never lead them. We never lead them. They always are telling us what they're seeing, and you're prompting them. So, but as she was describing the scenery and the landscape and everything, it was like, I know that it's exactly like she's saying. So there was a lot of, I think that the emotion is most likely mine because I was there.
It's like, when you meet somebody and you just connect instantly,
Yeah,
and I have, in some of my guests, this has happened to, and one of them said, I think we were separated at birth or something. I've had this incredible luxury of being with you and other guests that are so spectacular to me, but I do feel a connection. Like I feel something towards you too. And I don't think this is just happenstance that somewhere in a blueprint, this was already planned, like you said.
exactly.
And I always call it following the breadcrumbs. I just follow the breadcrumbs and and see what happens. And what about your book? Because you wrote a book called Awaken. Is that right?
Awake, the purpose of
Oh,
life and why
Awake.
you're here. So, oh, Sandy, connection is so extraordinary when you feel it. And I'm sure also that we will have been together, all of the people, there's many of us here
Mhm.
to help navigate this evolution at the moment.
I'm
So there's
getting
no
chills.
doubt,
I just have
no
to, I
doubt.
am getting chills throughout my body right now because what you're saying is absolutely speaks to my truth. But go ahead.
That's it. I have them too.
I
And you know what? I
know.
call them truth bumps. It's
Oh.
affirmation.
Yeah,
So, but
yes,
back to the
exactly.
book. With the book, I wrote that. I wrote that in, oh gosh, I started in about 2010. It took me a long time to write it because I changed so much myself. And the book was to explain the discoveries that I made about the purpose of life. And the purpose of life is not a destination. It's not that we're going to be a success at something or we're going to have a certain achievement. It's every single minute of every day. And I think people are like, well, maybe they get disappointed in that, but it's like, that's what it is. It's every minute of every day. So I wrote that book to showcase through my own life how I suppose the contract or the blueprint is laid out because I described, we end up with the parents or no parents that we're meant to and why. And in my case, I had a very positive parenting experience, certainly compared to some. But still, it was my experience, and I tried to build and show people how it built up to what I came to be doing, which was pretty out there, as you say, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It's very different now because bringing this to mainstream, we are 20, 30 years down the track. But in that Awake book, I wanted to help people understand the connections, how you recognize them, but just in day-to-day terms, how everything is playing out and does play out as it's meant to. One of the things I was told when I was writing that book was I had to be very honest
Yeah.
because I did some things that they would have been seen as immoral. And already I had known that, well, I couldn't stop it. And I say I couldn't stop it because the energy, the pull is so strong. And it's a love at first sight type story. But it was an extraordinary experience. And I wrote all about that. But yes, being in relationships when you meet someone of that caliber and it takes over and it sends you in a new direction, people still judge it very harshly.
Mm.
So I was to talk about that, and I did. But also, there are many other little things and big things that happen in life that are all part of the weaving the fabric of this life.
Yeah, I just pay attention. And I don't put a lot of weight on anything. I don't go, oh, what does that mean? What does that mean? I used to, believe me, I used to. But now I just go, that's interesting. Where's that going to weave in? And I got to tell you, Toni, just doing this podcast, the synchronicities that have happened are uncanny. I almost could write a book about that.
Yeah.
And then one of my other guests, I read her book, and then I had a connection to somebody that she wrote about in the book who had passed. It was just, I didn't know that person, but I had things come into me before I even knew about her. It was just, there's a lot of breadcrumbs, let's just say that. And I always encourage people, just look at the magic, the twinkling that's happening all around us. And it's usually not the real big things. It's the little moments in time. But then don't put too much weight on it, but just let it sit with you and go, oh, that was cool. And see what happens. Because, oh my gosh, I am a living, breathing example of that. So, doing this work, this is your life's purpose. You know that, right? And what has it done for you now that you're doing this? What person are you today that you weren't back then?
Gee, back then I was completely unself-aware, completely. And I've always been pretty light-hearted person and probably confident in many ways. But once I started to look deeper at who I was and then gaining a really deep understanding of myself, I realized lots of things, but first that I'm very intense. And I have to be that way to create this psychology, to be able to have written it. And part of, I think, writing this being the mission in life, writing this psychology was having to feel what it felt like to be almost all of the things that people could possibly go through. There's been a time where I've felt it. It might not have been for long. I'll give you an example of that. Me, I'm not a jealous person. It's never been a thing for me, but it is for a lot of people
Mhm.
because we all come here to do insecurities. It's part of
Mhm.
our human experience. But so, for example, having not been a jealous person, it's hard to comprehend how intense that feels for somebody who does feel it. Well, sure enough, there came a time where I felt it. And I was pretty aware of how everything was working by then. It was like, whoa, that's harsh. And all of it came together, all of that and many, many, many other things that I experienced helped me understand that people are coming to do an insecurity and they can't help it.
Right.
So if someone isn't doing jealousy, for example, and somebody who is and they drive them crazy because they're jealous, it's like if you felt it, you would know that they don't have any control over that. It's part of their experience
Exactly.
to work through
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
So yeah,
And then, so all the experiences you had in your past were the building blocks
they
for who
were.
you are today. And I mean, I went through some things in my past. I wouldn't trade them for a second, and I've often said some of the worst experiences that I've had that I thought I cannot get back from this. I'd like to write a thank you note to those experiences because I would not be who I am today and
That's
I
it.
wouldn't be as solid. I'm still working on the solidity part, but the grounding part, a work in progress. But you've got to have the hot and the cold, so you understand that. What about the work you're doing now? Can you tell us what the school is that you have and yeah, some of the work you're doing?
Yeah. So not long after I came back from training with Dr. Brian Weiss, I realized that part of the mission was to teach people, teach practitioners past life regression. So it started as that. And I started my Toni Reilly Institute not too long after that training. And I started to teach people. And it's developed in a big ways from the past life regression. It started as that, but we also developed a system. We call it Life Map, a system to literally see someone's outline. What are they here doing in this life? We can see it for anybody. So, and it all involves insecurity. It all
Mm,
involves an inherent character. So parts of ourselves that we can train, we can change, and we will change over time. And there's parts of ourselves that we can't. And it's like, if people knew that there's aspects of themselves that they can't change, they would stop trying to push themselves to be something that they will never be easy for them. So it's like, find what's easy for you, and that is your inherentness, and then build from there. So there's that, and there's been other modalities that we discovered, or kind of they unraveled, if you like, as part of this soul life psychology that it's become. Also, another important part was bruises, which are the insecurities, and you can literally say they're similar, but we've gone deeper to attachment styles. You can see who's doing what and why why it's hard, where their challenges come from, how they can manage it. Really, it's all self-awareness. So there's that. And what we've been doing for the past since about 2015, the soul life psychology was kind of in its first
mhm.
stage, and where we were training people at not great numbers of people, but training small groups of people to start testing how do we present it and how do we find the best way to reach many people. And of course, we're in 2024 now.
Yes, we
And
are.
so we've trained lots of people, and they're more or less been test runs, but now we've got all of the modalities in a
Mhm.
format that's very palatable, and the way that we teach it is also flowing a whole lot more. So it's absolutely, it will change anybody's life, whether they do it to use it professionally, or whether they do it to for self-awareness, for personal development. One way or the other, people will come out differently. A lot of
And
the things are they're just unique. They're not taught anywhere else.
and is this something you do online? You don't have to be physically with you, right? It's
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about serendipity before. When you start to take notice of it, it's so it's kind of loud, even though it's subtle. It's like,
oh,
what? But for
yeah.
me, I can remember starting to put things online in about 2017. I started. We were all just face to face before then,
Mhm,
and of course, COVID came along and forced everybody,
mhm,
if they wanted to connect, they had to get online. So it was like, so in hindsight, which happens for all of our processes, all the shitty roads we go down, we see in hindsight why. And it was the same with this getting things online. It was like, oh, because you can reach a global audience
right.
online.
Sure.
And so, yes, the answer to the question is it's done online. So it's live online and also through videos, but you need the live element to be able to really give examples and express so that the practitioners can understand what's going on. Plus, also, we're working on them through the process so that they get to feel what this is like for a client, or even if they choose to do it with their family. But yeah.
And so when you do past life regression, obviously you do that online. You did it with me
Yeah.
online, so
Yeah.
can do
Yeah.
that online. Well, that just opens up so much more possibility for all the rest of us in the world that aren't in
Yes.
Australia with you. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Toni, I cannot believe we're towards the end. I do have a few questions I ask everybody, but is there anything else that you would like to share that you would like people to know about the work you do?
Oh, gee. I would like them to know that in this work, you will discover that everything's all about you, or if you're working with people, it's to work for them, help them discover what it is about them. So that's essentially what the work does. It's super fulfilling, and people can use this course, or what they will learn in the course, in if they work with people, in like in any role. Actually, it's helpful. We're about to go into teams actually for sport. The other thing is that I'd like to say is the psychology, soul life psychology turned out to be, I only realized this about 5 years ago, that it was more towards, is for the future, which is here now, because it was for and directed at the young people who started to be born in 2002. So those people, and that's every single person that was born on the planet and has been born since, they come in with an inherent softness, an inherent intuitive capacity. We all have that, but they come in with it stronger because they're here to do something different to what we were doing before 2000. So this psychology is ultimately for them, and to change the way that psychology works, because they don't work logically. Their default is intuition, whereas our default was logic. So in that way, things that worked for people with managing their mind and these types of things, it doesn't work for them, for these younger people. Of course, these young people are almost in their mid-20s now.
Yeah.
And of course, all the ones that come after them are in this as well. So it's very exciting, but really it can help anyone. And I guess I would love to say, if any listener feels drawn towards your intuition, you can do courses with me to become a practitioner, or you can do it for personal development.
Well, yeah, I'm one of your biggest fans, so you can't go wrong. And it also sounds like the classic question, what's my purpose? I know I have a purpose. It sounds like through that work, you will find out what your purpose is.
You will absolutely find out what your purpose is.
Well, what's better than that?
Yeah.
Honestly, that's amazing. Well, I'm going to ask you a few questions. I ask
Okay.
everybody, Toni. Um, since we talk about fear and unzipping fear on this podcast, what is your number one go-to strategy to relieve mental distress in your own life?
For me, this is just my way. I feel for when my mind gets busy and I guess cluttered, or you're obsessing over something, then I would go down into the feeling and feel it and feel it. So part of the process is maybe not to immediately alleviate it. It's, why is it there? Try and discover, why is the fear there? Because often it's forcing us to make a decision, or it's forcing us to do something, not do something. So listen to it. Listen to, what is it trying to tell you? And do that through your feeling. You can just put your hand here and be like, ooh, start to, I guess, coach yourself as to um, is this really right for me, or is it wrong for me? What am I missing? But go with the feeling.
So those who are listening, Toni put her hand on her heart when she was doing that. So no, that's actually a lovely thing to do. Is there a life-changing moment that shaped who you are today?
There's been
Yeah,
so many epiphanies, so many. And even now in my 50s, I'm still getting them.
of
So
course.
you said before the work in progress, but I think probably one of the profound ones that changed me. There's so many grounded in reality, but when I went home, so I had my big transcendent experience. I was not expecting it, and it was like I knew after that that there was so much more. I already knew, but it was amplified to know that up there, or it's not even up there, it's all around. But when we leave the
Mhm.
body, we are going to the most extraordinary energy. We're returning to what we all come from. So that moment was really special.
Was that through an NDE or was that through a past life regression?
For me, it was not an NDE. I haven't had one. But for me, I'd just been to mediumship college, but a friend was going to regress me, and it took over and it wasn't regression. And I ended up, you go so deep,
Yeah.
your body's like a brick,
Mhm.
and you're going off into this energy that you really can't describe. It's so everything but nothing, and it's extraordinary. But in that space, so I guess you could say it was facilitated, but I think more we thought we were doing a past life, but off I went elsewhere. But not by chance. That was in 2011, actually.
Oh, how fantastic is that? Um,
Yeah.
what's the best advice you've received in life, personally or professionally?
My personal mentor, who was a psychotherapist, I just loved her. Pamela, her name was. She was quite the mentor for me. Um, she passed actually, but she said to me a few things because I was going through my emotional turmoil in relationships. Couple things she said: stop talking about it. You're feeding it energy. And that's because I'd been going on and on and on about it for a while. So you wouldn't say it to someone after they've only told you 5 times, but
Mhm.
she was like, stop talking about it. And I heard it, like it resonated with me. And I thought, I got it. The other thing she said to me was, there's no should or shouldn't. So when people are saying to themselves, I should do this, I shouldn't do that, she said, there's no should or shouldn't. Just go with what feels right and what you want to say or what you want to do. And those are probably
That's
the
great
most
advice.
profound ones.
It's great advice for all of us. We should all take that to heart. What advice would you give to someone starting their own self-discovery journey?
Oh, there's no going back. There's no going back when you start. And I feel like one of the most beautiful gateways is intuition. It's a segue to self-discovery. I
Mhm.
think it's a secret segue because nobody realizes that will be the outcome. But there's another thing that we haven't talked about that I discovered was that
Mm.
grief when we experience it in life, whether it's through death, we lose someone, or breakdown of a relationship, or whichever causes it, that process throws us into a space where we've got no control over the feelings or the depression, the anger, whatever it is. So it is also the gateway to wisdom. So please try to be okay with going through the processes because there's a purpose to them.
And I've said this before, but if you grieve so heavily, it means you've loved so deeply.
That's
And
right.
that's just so beautiful. Toni, you're gonna have to come back. We're gonna have to do a whole nother episode about grief. Yes.
Yes.
I mean, that's really big. What does a successful life look like to you?
This sounds so cliche,
Mm-mm.
but a successful life looks like feeling good about who you are. And I think in the process of getting to feel good about who you are, you realize what's important to you. And it is, as they say, it's the simple things. It's being in relationships with people who really resonate with you, and not getting caught up in the clutter of what's going on externally, which is absolutely out of your control. And that includes within politics, within family dramas. It's all of that. Just what matters to you is getting to know yourself, and then in that process, knowing what's good for you.
Beautiful. Absolutely. And our last, this is a statement actually. Complete this sentence. In the past, I was, and now I am.
In the past, for me, being assertive was unheard of. But through this whole process, it's one of the greatest things that I have grown into. I can be assertive now.
And that is perfect,
Yeah,
right? That
yeah.
is because when you told me that you had fear of speaking to anybody, really, look at you. I mean, nobody would think that at all. So, well, Toni, Dr. Toni Reilly, I'm so happy that you came on Fear Unzipped. It just meant the world to me. And I'm so happy to see you again. And we're going to do this again for sure because I really do want to dive into grief. I think that's
Yes.
really important.
Thanks for
So,
having me.
oh my gosh, with that said, wishing you well, mwah, sending you love, and much more later. Much more later. Bye. Thank you, Toni.